Sono qui in qualità di ufficio stampa Universal Pictures e grazie a tutti per essere qui. È una serata che per noi è molto, molto importante e molto speciale, e io non vi trattengo ulteriormente e vi presento Lu Marini. Ciao Lu. Okay. Lu speaks just tiny bit of Italian.
Yeah, una volta. One jump, that's all I got. No, but I understand more.
No, capisce tutto, quindi ovviamente lui è qui per farvi un saluto. Saremo, come sapete, al Circolo degli Artisti, dove ci sarà questo bellissimo concerto. Io dico che è bellissimo perché ho fiducia che sarà bellissimo, e noi tutti fantastici, che inizierà verso le 22:20, 22:30, quindi il film finirà massimo alle 11 meno un quarto. Il tempo che voi arrivate lì, il concerto sarà iniziato da un quarto d'ora, quindi non vi preoccupate, tranquilli, e arrivate e c'è tutto il posto che volete. E Lu ovviamente ha piacere a rispondere a qualche domanda. Se avete qualche curiosità, prego.
La faccio in italiano così.
Sì.
Io, Lu Marini ha una carriera strepitosa, ha suonato con molti dei più grandi musicisti degli ultimi anni. Voglio sapere come si sente a essere così identificato comunque, nonostante tutte le sue esperienze, con i Blues Brothers.
Did you understand, Lou? Do you want me to translate it? Because of course he was saying that he had an amazing career and he played with the greatest musicians and artists, and that how do you feel, realizing that you were mostly recognized for your role in the Blues Brothers?
Well, I always tell people that playing with the Blues Brothers has been sort of a wonderful gift, because when we did it originally, it happened just because Belushi and Aykroyd used to like to come and play with the Saturday Night Live band, and when we would play for the audience before the show, and there was so much positive energy from that's what gave them the idea to do the Blues Brothers. And then when we were called to do the very first series of concerts, that was when Steve Martin was at his zenith as a stand-up comedian, and we just thought that we would have 10 days at the Universal Amphitheater and we would make some nice pasta and that would be the end of it. But when we started playing, we realized that the band was a special band. And I think one thing that made it special was that it was diversi, extremely diverse, because Matt Murphy was an absolute blues player. Steve and Duck came from Memphis, and they were the founders of Stax Volt. Alan Rubin, Mr. Fabulous, was groomed to be the principal trumpet player in the New York Philharmonic by his teacher at Juilliard School of Music. I had played with Doc Severinsen and Woody Herman and Blood, Sweat and Tears and Frank Zappa. Tom Malone had much this similar situation. So we had such a wide range that when we started to play and we saw the response from the audience, I remember vividly the Universal Amphitheater has sort of curved seats, and I remember I was the outside horn player, and I have a vivid memory of exactly this. Jack Nicholson sitting right where my wife is sitting, and we're playing B-movie Boxcar Blues, and I look out in the audience and Jack Nicholson goes, so we knew that we had something special. But no, if anyone had told me that 30 years later we would still be playing together, those of us who are left standing, I would have thought, fantasia. But because of the Blues Brothers, I call it the world's greatest part-time job. Because this summer we played 8 concerts. That's all we played. We played in Paris, in Zurich, in Oslo, right after that maniac killed all those people, and we have been playing in Norway. We've played over 100 concerts in Norway over the years, and we played for 12,000 people, and it was a very cathartic, very powerful concert there. And we played 4 beautiful concerts in Italy this summer, in Spoleto, in Parma, in Ledici, and in the Bard in Valdosta, and wonderful concerts. And my point is that because of the Blues Brothers, the movie, and the cult popularity of it, we have gotten to play as a band in places that if I was out on the road with Steely Dan or with James Taylor, we could never play these places because you can't have a giant production with 20 big trucks and all that kind of stuff. So we have gotten to play in villages and small places, and then big concerts with, we played once in the Fiesta de la Merced in Barcelona for 100,000 people, you know, so, and then the next night we might be playing in a club for 200 people. So, and also the Blues Brothers band, the things that happen to us still are crazier than the movie, especially when we play in Italy. Yeah, so it's been a big gift, really.
Silly question. Who was the idea of make you playing, working on the bar when in the Aretha Franklin sequence?
I think that the choreography, the dance choreographer, whose name now I can't remember, but he had the idea that would be interesting for me to be up there. But I always tell people that we rehearsed in a big studio and we're watching ourselves in the mirror to try to, you know, and I'm not a dancer, and so I was uptight about and one thing about it though is that there's something that used to always drive me crazy when you see movies where there's a saxophone player playing, and often because of the way they overdub movies, you'll see the saxophone player and he's going like this, but there's no saxophone, and then he takes his horn down and then you hear the saxophone. So I really worked hard to be able to play my solo and dance at the same time, which wasn't easy, and it really took me a lot of hours. Then when we get to the studio, and they hadn't told me that I was going to be dancing on the counter, so the counter was chest high. It wasn't a normal counter, and it was only about this wide. And then there's the stoves and the pots and pans, and I'm up so high, and with it was a very nerve-wracking day for me. And you know, when at the end of that scene, when Aretha, when I'm looking at Aretha with this look on my face, and she says, "Ah, go on," and I think that look was relief, you know. I'm done.
Penso che tutti voi abbiate capito, perché ho visto che tutti quanti avete riso, non avete bisogno di traduzioni perché poi lui parla in maniera estremamente chiara. C'è qualcosa che volete tradotto? No. Prego.
In your experience, because around this movie, the movie is a legend, and there are legends in the legends. And one of the legends is how difficult it was to shoot the movie, because there was trouble with the stunts, in a way with John Belushi, and was so difficult. Did you feel this kind of troubles during the shooting or not?
Well, we weren't around for a lot of the stunts. And I sort of regret that about the first movie, because that was at a time in the late 70s, you know, where the world was un poco crazy, you know, and we were making $1,000 a week in 1970 just as per diem. Every week, the road manager would come up and hand us 10 $100 bills, and that was when $100 bills actually were worth something, you know, and so. We didn't go to the set, most of us, unless we were actually working. But when we were working, I found the atmosphere on one of the assistant directors, who was a very cool guy, told me that when the crew found out that the musicians in the band were going to be actors in the movie, they were not happy about it. And they thought that there would be a lot of complications and a lot of delays and a lot of silliness. But he told me after we had been there for a couple of weeks that when we were on the set was the crew's favorite time to work, because the band, the Blues Brothers band, was a very funny band. Alan Rubin was one of the quickest minds and very funniest people I've ever met in my life, of anybody. And Duck Dunn is one of those kind of people who, when Duck tells a joke, before he gets to the end of the joke, you're already laughing, because he's just naturally funny. So there was a lot of interaction between the crew and the band. And my feeling about it, and even when Belushi was crazy, I mean, for instance, in the Bob's Country Bunker scene, at the end of the scene when Belushi gives the speech to us and tells us the next gig is going to be dynamite, and he's trying to reassure the band, that scene was shot at about 4 o'clock in the morning in the hills of Universal, outside of Universal Studios, up in the hills, in the Hollywood Hills, and it was in December. And man, it was super cold. It was super cold, and everybody was wearing these big, heavy down jackets, and then you'd have to take everything off to shoot the scene. And Belushi, that was a long speech. They cut it down in the movie, but it was a long thing for him to say. And so he started off, and you know, there's like 100 people around with the crew and everybody who was around. And he starts off and he says the speech perfectly, but he screws up the last sentence. So they say, okay, we do it again, you know. So now he does it, but he screws up a little before the last sentence. And each succeeding time, he screwed up earlier and earlier until finally he fucked up the first word, you know. And when that happened, I remember that there's 150 people or whatever, the whole crew, there was one of those laughs where people were still laughing like 5 minutes later. People were just like, ah. You had the tears coming. It was just the buildup of it was fantastic. But the second movie, I went to the set almost every day, and I got to know, I had a much richer experience personally, because I got to know all the people in the crew well, instead of just when we were around.
Thank you, Lou. The last question.